Life was good. Scratch that. Life was perfect. It was just me, my ridiculously comfortable armchair, an endless streaming queue, and Mittens. Mittens, my 10-pound ball of ginger fluff, was the undisputed queen of our cozy little kingdom, aka my rented duplex unit. Her demands were simple: food, chin scratches, sunbeams, and the occasional dramatic sigh when I failed to produce tuna immediately upon request. She slept roughly 18 hours a day, used her scratching post with commendable accuracy, mostly, and her biggest contribution to household chaos was leaving a fine layer of orange fur on literally everything I owned, especially black clothing. Low maintenance? Practically zero maintenance. What could possibly go wrong? Famous last words, right? Enter Karen Crabtree, my next-door neighbor. Karen, whose perfectly manicured lawn looked like it was trimmed with nail scissors and whose prize-winning begonias seemed to wilt if you looked at them too cheerfully. Karen, who moved with the stiff disapproval of someone perpetually smelling something unpleasant, which often was probably just my existence. I was outside one sunny afternoon, attempting to revive a pot of basil that looked deeply depressed, when Karen materialized at the edge of my tiny patch of lawn. She had that pinched look on her face, the one that usually preceded a complaint about the precise angle of my recycling bin or the unacceptable cheerfulness of my welcome mat. "Leo," she began, her voice tight. No preamble, no hello, just straight to the indictment. "Your cat." I looked around. Mittens was, at that moment, engaged in her favorite pastime, napping elegantly in a patch of sun on my porch step. She looked about as threatening as a plush toy. "Mittens?" I asked, genuinely confused. "What about her?" Karen drew herself up. "I saw it, with my own 2 eyes. It was looking at my prize-winning begonias." She pointed a trembling finger towards her flower bed, as if Mittens had just strafed it with tiny feline laser beams. I blinked. "Looking at them?" "Karen, she's a cat. They look at things. Birds, bugs, interesting shadows, possibly existential voids. I don't think committing psychic assault on begonias is high on her to-do list." "Don't be deliberately obtuse," Karen snapped. "It was staring, with malicious intent, assessing them. I spend hours nurturing those blooms, and I will not have them intimidated by your creature." Intimidated begonias? Was that even a thing? "Karen," I tried, aiming for reason. She was probably just watching a bee, or maybe she was asleep with her eyes open. She does that sometimes. It's creepy, but harmless. "Excuses," Karen declared, folding her arms. "That animal has shifty eyes. I saw it. Keep it properly contained, Leo. Away from my begonias. This is your official warning." And with that, she spun on her heel and marched back to her pristine, begonia-fortified domain, leaving me standing there, basil pot in hand, utterly bewildered. Mittens, oblivious to her alleged crimes against horticulture, merely stretched, yawned, and rolled over to nap on her other side. Okay, fine. My neighbor was clearly unhinged. But hey, I like peace, or at least the absence of being yelled at about psychic flower attacks. So I tried. Lord, how I tried. I started keeping Mittens inside more, even though she loved her supervised sunbathing sessions on the porch. I bought her a fancy new cat tree with multiple levels, hoping to provide sufficient indoor entertainment that she wouldn't feel the urge to telepathically harass Karen's petunias. I even tried being extra nice to Karen, offering cheerful waves, ignored, and asking about her begonias, met with suspicious glares. "I swear, Sarah," I lamented over the phone to my best friend, "I'm practically keeping Mittens under house arrest. I built her a pillow fort yesterday just to keep her occupied. A pillow fort? Because Karen thinks she's projecting bad vibes at her flower bed." Sarah snorted. "Dude, that's certifiably insane. You can't imprison your cat because your neighbor channels plant emotions. That's not normal. Tell me about it, I groaned. But the complaints are getting weirder. Yesterday, get this. She cornered me by the mailbox and accused Mittens of disrupting the neighborhood's feng shui by napping on the west-facing side of the porch instead of the east-facing side. Feng shui? Sarah screeched with laughter. Seriously? Does she have tiny bagua mirrors aimed at your house? Wouldn't surprise me, I muttered. Maybe Karen is disrupting the neighborhood's feng shui with her overwhelming aura of perpetual annoyance. The final straw came a week later. I was taking out the recycling when Karen stormed over, brandishing her phone like a weapon. "Leo, I have photographic evidence," she crowed triumphantly. I braced myself. What now? Had Mittens been caught dreaming aggressively near the property line? Karen shoved the phone under my nose. It showed a blurry picture of Mittens, fast asleep in a patch of sun on my lawn, a good 10 feet away from the rickety bird feeder Karen insisted on placing practically on the property line. "Your predator," Karen accused, jabbing a finger at the sleeping fluffball on the screen. "Stalking innocent birds at my feeder." I stared at the picture, then at Karen. "Karen, she's asleep. Completely unconscious. Look, she's even doing that little paw-twitching thing she does when she's dreaming, probably about tuna. And besides, that feeder is basically in my yard anyway." Semantics. Karen dismissed my irrefutable logic with a wave of her hand. "The intent was clear. It's a menace to wildlife, a danger to the delicate avian ecosystem. I'm considering reporting you to animal control." That did it. Animal control, I repeated, my voice rising despite myself. "You want to call animal control because my cat is napping near your bird feeder? Are you actually hearing the words coming out of your mouth? Don't you mock me, young man." Karen's face flushed an alarming shade of puce. "This is a serious violation. One more incident, one more, and I will take further action. You need to control your animal." She punctuated this with another finger jab towards my house before stalking off again. I stood there, recycling bin dangling from my hand, watching her retreat. Control my animal. The phrase echoed in my head. My perfectly harmless, mostly sleeping 10-pound cat. She acts like Mittens is a saber-toothed tiger escaped from the zoo, not a fluffball whose most ferocious act is batting dust bunnies under the sofa. The injustice of it all bubbled inside me. Trying to reason with her was pointless. Appeasing her was impossible. Arguing just made her angrier. Control my animal. What if... A tiny, wicked spark ignited in the frustration-addled corners of my brain. She hates one cat this much, complains about her napping, accuses her of thinking aggressively at flowers. What would happen? What absolute chaos would ensue if there wasn't just one cat? What if there were several? An undeniable clouder of cats? She wants me to control my animal? Maybe I needed more animals that required controlling. Many, many more animals. The idea started as a fleeting, ridiculous fantasy. Me drowning in cats, just to spite the crazy lady next door. But the more I thought about it, the funnier it seemed. The image of Karen's face, confronted not by one shifty-eyed creature, but by a whole gang of them. It was intoxicating. It was petty, yes. It was absurd, absolutely. It was probably a monumentally terrible life decision that involved far too much litter scooping, but oh, the satisfaction. "What do you think, girl?" I asked Mittens later, as she nonchalantly groomed a paw on my lap. "Ready for some siblings? Like, say, half a dozen siblings? Think of the synchronized napping. Think of the multicat zoomies. Think of Karen having a complete meltdown on her perfectly manicured lawn. It would be legendary, wouldn't it?" Mittens just blinked slowly, yawned, and started purring, clearly unimpressed by my descent into madness. But the seed was planted. Operation More Cats was officially underway. The next Saturday, I found myself at the local animal shelter. The air hummed with a cacophony of hopeful meows and mournful barks. I felt a weird mixture of guilt. Was I really adopting living beings out of spite? And giddy anticipation. I told myself I was doing a good deed, rescuing deserving animals, while conveniently fulfilling my increasingly elaborate revenge plot. Win-win, right? Just looking around, I told the friendly volunteer who approached me, trying to sound casual. Thinking of getting a friend for my cat at home. Mittens seems a little solitary. Solitary and blissfully unaware of the feline hurricane about to hit her life, I added silently. "Oh, that's wonderful," the volunteer beamed. "We have so many lovely cats needing forever homes. Any particular age or personality you have in mind?" "Oh, you know," I said, scanning the rows of cages, trying to appear nonchalant while mentally assessing candidates for maximum Karen annoyance factor. Adaptable, friendly, good with other cats, hopefully, or at least capable of holding their own in minor territorial disputes. Maybe one that's particularly fluffy? Check. A giant white Persian mix blinked regally from a corner cage. And perhaps one that's very sleek and black, for contrast. Check. A little void panther observed me silently. "Ooh, and is that orange tabby a climber? I like climbers." Check. A lanky ginger was currently attempting to scale his cage door. Excellent. It took 2 shelters and 3 days to assemble my army. I didn't want to adopt 6 cats from one place. That might look less like responsible pet owner expanding his family, and more like crazy cat guy possibly starting a cult. I perfected my story. "Oh, I just couldn't decide between these 2. Or, my Mittens really needs several companions, she has so much love to give." The shelter workers, bless their hearts, seemed mostly happy to see the cats going to what appeared to be a loving, if slightly eccentric, home. Then came the paperwork. Adoption forms, vet history, microchip registration, name after name. And then, inspiration struck with the force of 1,000 hairballs. The pet's name field. The owner's last name field. I dutifully filled in my own last name, but for the cat's official records, their microchips, their vet files, Karen's last name, Crabtree. It was beautiful, it was terrible. It was the cherry on top of the petty sundae. The fluffy white Persian became Snowball Crabtree. The sleek black panther, Shadow Crabtree. The orange climber, Agent Orange Crabtree, a name that felt particularly fitting. A sassy little tabby became General Sterling Crabtree. A delicate calico, Princess Penelope Crabtree. And the big, sleepy-looking gray cat I fell for at the second shelter? Sir Reginald Crabtree. "Wow, quite the family you're starting," remarked the final adoption coordinator, squinting at the form. Sir Reginald Crabtree. Princess Penelope Crabtree. Agent Orange Crabtree. Are these family names? Honoring relatives? I forced myself to keep a straight face, though I was vibrating internally with malicious glee. "Something like that," I said brightly. "Just honoring a prominent figure in the neighborhood. A real pillar of the community." "Yeah." She shrugged, more concerned with reminding me about vaccination schedules. "Okay then, just make sure you have enough litter boxes." Litter boxes. Right. The practicalities. In my spite-fueled haze, I hadn't quite thought through the logistical nightmare of suddenly increasing my household's feline population by 600%. The next few days were a blur of frantic preparation. My apartment, once a haven of relative calm, began to resemble a Petco warehouse after a tornado. I bought food bowls, so many food bowls, water fountains because apparently cats prefer running water, or maybe just splashing in it. Scratching posts of every conceivable size and texture, placed strategically in the hopes of saving my sofa from utter annihilation. Cat beds, cat toys, catnip mice, feather wands, and litter boxes. Good Lord, the litter boxes, 4 of them. Where was I even going to put 4 litter boxes? Did they make stackable ones? Self-cleaning ones that also composed sonnets? This revenge scheme was rapidly becoming more expensive than therapy. Mittens watched the influx of feline paraphernalia with deep suspicion, her usual regal composure replaced by an expression that clearly said, "Human, what fresh hell is this?" "It's for your own good, girl," I told her, wrestling a giant multi-level cat condo into the corner. "Think of it as enrichment and ammunition." She was not convinced. Finally, arrival day dawned. I lined up the 6 carriers in my living room, took a deep breath, and opened the doors. It was like detonating a fluff bomb. Cats exploded outwards in every direction. Shadow Crabtree lived up to his name and vanished instantly under the sofa. Snowball Crabtree puffed up to twice his size and hissed tentatively at Mittens. Agent Orange Crabtree made a beeline for the curtains and began climbing with alarming speed and agility. General Sterling Crabtree strutted around, sniffing everything with an air of authority. Princess Penelope Crabtree darted behind the TV. Sir Reginald Crabtree lumbered out, yawned widely, surveyed the chaos with sleepy disdain, hopped onto the most comfortable armchair, mine, naturally, curled up, and promptly fell asleep. Mittens, meanwhile, stood frozen in the center of the room, tail bushed out like a bottle brush, looking utterly betrayed and horrified. "Okay," I muttered, hands on my hips, surveying the furry pandemonium. "Deep breaths. This is fine. Totally fine. It's just temporary adjustment chaos. They'll all become best friends eventually, grooming each other and sleeping in adorable piles, right? Right?" The sudden, overwhelming scent of 6 different kinds of nervous cat filled the air. "Oh God," I whispered. "What have I done?" The crucial next step was the reveal. How to ensure Karen witnessed the glorious multiplication of her feline nemeses. I considered staging an elaborate, accidental cat escape into the yard, but corralling 7 cats, 6 of whom barely knew me, seemed like a recipe for actual disaster and genuine animal control calls. The window seemed safer. Later that afternoon, I saw my chance. Karen was outside, meticulously tending to her wretched begonias, her back to my house. Inside, a fragile truce had formed. The new crabtrees were cautiously exploring, while Mittens observed them from the top of her new cat condo like a disgruntled general surveying unruly troops. By sheer luck, Snowball, Agent Orange, and the magnificent Sir Reginald were all momentarily clustered near the front window, perhaps drawn by a sunbeam or a particularly interesting dust mote. Showtime. I casually sauntered over and opened the blinds wide. "Lovely day, isn't it, kiddies?" I chirped loudly, hoping my voice would carry. Karen, predictably, glanced over at the sound. Her eyes scanned my window. They passed over Agent Orange, widened slightly at Snowball, then locked onto the sheer fluffy majesty of Sir Reginald, yawning on the windowsill. Her brain seemed to process this information slowly. 1 cat, 2 cats, 3 cats. Where was Mittens? Oh, wait. There was Mittens on the condo. That made 4 cats visible. Karen froze. Her gardening trowel slipped from her grasp, clattering onto her perfect brick pathway. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes darted frantically around my window as if expecting more cats to spontaneously materialize, which honestly wasn't impossible at this point. Yes! My internal monologue did a victory lap. The trowel drop, the gasp. It's even better than I imagined. Karen didn't shriek. She did something far more terrifying. She drew herself up to her full, rigid height, her face pale with fury, stared directly at me. I quickly ducked behind the curtain, but I peeked, and then spun around and marched stiffly back into her house, slamming the door with a force that rattled my window panes. Oh, it was on! It was so on! I immediately gathered the entire Crabtree clan, plus Mittens, for a celebratory distribution of salmon-flavored treats. Phase 1, complete. Living with 7 cats, I quickly discovered, is less like owning pets and more like managing a chaotic, furry, perpetually shedding commune. My apartment, once a bastion of relative tidiness, now existed in a state of constant, low-level entropy. There was fur everywhere, on the ceiling fan blades, inside the refrigerator. How? Woven into the very fabric of my being. My grocery bill doubled, split evenly between human food and industrial quantities of cat food in flavors like ocean fish medley and turkey giblet surprise. And the litter boxes. Oh, the litter boxes. Scooping became a twice-daily ritual, a Sisyphean task performed while trying not to inhale toxic ammonia fumes. Sleep became a distant memory. The 3 a.m. zoomies were now a synchronized event, sounding like a herd of tiny, furry wildebeest stampeding through my living room. Agent Orange discovered he could open kitchen cabinets. Shadow perfected the art of appearing suddenly out of thin air, startling me half to death. Sir Reginald snored loudly. Princess Penelope developed a fascination with knocking things off tables, pens, keys, my will to live. General Sterling insisted on supervising my work-from-home calls by walking directly across my keyboard, occasionally sending cryptic messages like ULP to my bewildered colleagues. Mittens, after a week of sulking and issuing low growls from high perches, seemed to accept her fate as the reluctant matriarch of this unruly mob. She didn't exactly play with them, but she stopped actively plotting their demise and occasionally engaged in a half-hearted chase or a shared nap, as long as they didn't touch her. But amidst the chaos, the expense, and the faint, lingering smell of eau de litter box, there was joy. Unexpected, chaotic joy. Watching Snowball chase his own fluffy tail. Finding Shadow curled up asleep in a laundry basket. Agent Orange finally mastering the summit of the tallest bookshelf. The sheer, overwhelming volume of purring when all 7 decided my lap was the place to be during movie night. They were infuriating, expensive, and messy, but damn it, they were also adorable. Karen, however, did not share my newfound appreciation for multicat households. The door slam had been merely the opening salvo. The complaints started immediately and escalated with terrifying speed. First came the official HOA notices, citing violations I didn't even know existed. Excessive pet odor emanation. Based on what? Karen's psychic sniffing from across the lawn. Visual clutter, due to multiple animals visible through window. Are cats considered clutter now? Potential lawn damage from concentrated feline observation. I swear she made that one up. Then came the calls to animal control. I had 2 visits in the first week. Thankfully, I was prepared. I presented Officer Miller, who looked increasingly weary with each visit, with my meticulously organized binder containing adoption papers, vaccination records, microchip registrations, and city licenses for all 7 cats. So, Officer Miller sighed on his second visit, flipping through the papers while Agent Orange tried to climb his leg. 7 cats, all, crab trees? He raised an eyebrow. "That's right, officer," I chirped, scooping up Agent Orange. "Mittens, my original girl, and the 6 Crabtrees. Snowball, Shadow, Agent Orange, General Sterling, Princess Penelope, and Sir Reginald. All rescues, all fixed, all up to date on their shots. As you can see, they're indoor cats, well cared for, plenty of food, water, toys." I gestured around the slightly chaotic but undeniably cat-centric living room. Sir Reginald snored emphatically from the armchair. Officer Miller surveyed the scene. "Well, sir," he said slowly, "there's no city ordinance limiting the number of cats one resident can own, as long as they aren't creating a public health hazard or running loose. Your house seems clean enough, considering." He eyed the 4 litter boxes lined up in the hallway. "And the cats look healthy. I'll file the report." He gave me a look that said, "You know she's just going to call again tomorrow, right? Try to keep the, visual clutter to a minimum." "Will do, officer," I said, giving him my most responsible citizen smile. The real fireworks happened when Karen discovered the names. I still don't know exactly how she found out. Maybe Officer Miller let it slip. Maybe she intercepted my mail. Maybe she developed super hearing specifically attuned to the word Crabtree being yelled affectionately at a cat trying to steal my sandwich. She confronted me one afternoon as I was attempting to untangle Agent Orange from the wind chimes. Don't ask. She didn't yell. Her voice was dangerously quiet, low, and vibrating with suppressed rage. "Leo." My blood ran cold. "I know," she hissed, "what you named those vermin." I decided playing dumb was the only option. "My cats? Oh, you mean the Crabtree clan. Yes, lovely name, isn't it? Strong, traditional. Sir Reginald Crabtree has really taken to it, answers to it every time." This was a blatant lie. Sir Reginald answered to the sound of the treat bag and nothing else. Karen's eyes narrowed into slits. "You did that deliberately, to mock me, naming those things after me. It's harassment." I feigned wide-eyed innocence. "Harassment?" "Karen, I simply chose names I found appealing when I filled out the legal adoption paperwork and microchip registrations. It's purely a coincidence they share your surname. Are you suggesting I should have submitted my pet naming choices to the Architectural Review Committee as well?" I paused for effect. "Besides, they're wonderful cats. You should be honored to share a name with the noble Sir Reginald Crabtree." Her face contorted. "This isn't over, Leo," she seethed. "You and your Crabtree cats will regret this." She stormed off, radiating enough fury to power a small city. Worth it, I thought, disentangling a frantic Agent Orange. Totally worth it. The neighborhood, predictably, became aware of the great cat escalation. Gossip spread faster than snowball shed fur. Opinions were divided. Some thought Karen was finally getting what she deserved. Others thought I was an irresponsible menace contributing to the downfall of civilized society, one cat at a time. Kids loved pointing at my window, counting the visible crab trees. Brenda from the HOA sent me another notice, this one vaguely threatening action based on community disharmony. Karen, meanwhile, doubled down. Motion-activated sprinklers appeared along her side of the fence, aimed squarely at my yard. She planted lavender and rosemary bushes, supposed natural cat repellents, creating a fragrant but ultimately ineffective barrier. She left pamphlets about responsible pet ownership, clearly defining responsible as owning 0 pets, in my mailbox. I retaliated in the only way I knew how. More cat stuff. A ridiculously tall, multi-platform cat tree was positioned prominently in the front window. I bought little bow ties for Sir Reginald and Princess Penelope. I might have taught Agent Orange to bat playfully at the window whenever Karen was in her yard. Petty? Absolutely. Effective? Debatable? Hilarious? Undeniably. The stalemate might have continued indefinitely. A Cold War fought with sprinklers and strategically placed cat beds, if not for Sir Reginald Crabtree. Sir Reginald, despite his size and generally sleepy demeanor, was surprisingly stealthy. One afternoon, while I was distracted by General Sterling attempting to help me assemble an IKEA bookshelf, Sir Reginald slipped out the back door when I brought the trash in. I didn't even realize he was gone until I saw him, bold as brass, sitting directly in the middle of Karen Crabtree's award-winning begonias. Not eating them, not digging, just sitting, like a fluffy gray Buddha contemplating the meaninglessness of prize-winning horticulture. My heart stopped. This was it. The one more incident Karen had threatened. I braced for the shriek, the call to animal control, possibly the deployment of tactical begonia defense systems. I crept to the window, peeking through the blinds. Karen came out. She saw him. She froze. Sir Reginald blinked slowly at her. Karen looked left, looked right, bent down. And then she reached out a tentative hand and scratched Sir Reginald behind the ears. I nearly fell over. Sir Reginald, monarch of comfort that he was, leaned into the scratch, emitting a purr that I could practically hear from across the yard. Karen knelt there for a good minute, stroking the giant gray cat currently desecrating her prize flowers. Then, she seemed to realize what she was doing, glanced guiltily towards my house, stood up abruptly, shooed Sir Reginald gently, "Go on now, you big lump," and retreated inside. Sir Reginald, looking pleased with himself, ambled back towards my yard. The complaints didn't stop entirely after that, but they changed. They became less frequent, less venomous. Karen never acknowledged the begonia incident, never admitted to petting Sir Reginald Crabtree. But sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch her watching my window, a strange, almost wistful expression on her face as Agent Orange chased his tail or Snowball napped in a sunbeam. We never became friends. We probably never will. But an uneasy truce settled over Crabtree Lane. The 7 cat's mittens and the 6 audacious Crabtrees continued their reign of chaotic, furry, expensive joy inside my house. And outside? Well, let's just say the begonias seemed a little less intimidated these days. Maybe all it took was one stubborn neighbor, one harassed cat owner, and 6 strategically named rescue cats to achieve a very weird, very fragile kind of peace. Or maybe Sir Reginald Crabtree really is a feline diplomat. Either way, I wasn't getting rid of any of them. The Crabtree clan was here to stay.